Hey y'all, it's entry number 84 of this off-season series where we discuss a different player's fantasy value each day as a group. We are another day closer to the start of the 2022 NFL season. Each day we'll drop a name, go through some positives and some concerns of their fantasy profile, and then I'll give my personal opinion at the end. Today's discussion will be on Raheem Mostert, running back, Miami Dolphins. We'll start with the positives with Raheem Mostert's fantasy profile, rushing talent and ability. As a pure runner, Mostert has been fantastic over the course of his career, averaging at least 5 yards per carry in every single season of his career, and 5.7 yards per carry over the course of his entire career. In 2020, he created 1.66 yards per touch, which was the 12th best in the league among running backs, after creating 1.89 yards per touch in 2019, the 6th best among running backs. He's clearly effective when he gets the ball, which is what you want to hear if you're planning on investing in him in your fantasy leagues. The next thing I really like about Raheem Mostert's fantasy profile is that he's familiar with Mike McDaniel's offense. New Dolphins head coach Mike McDaniel spent a majority of his career working under or alongside current 49ers head coach Kyle Shanahan, including as the 49ers offensive coordinator in 2021. It is expected that McDaniel runs a lot of the same stuff that Shanahan has the past few years, which is good news if you're rostering Raheem Mostert, since he was extremely effective in that offense, and he could be preferred over Chase Edmonds and Myles Gaskin in certain situations, just because he should have a deeper understanding of the offense in general. The last major thing I really like about Raheem Mostert's fantasy profile is his speed and breakaway ability. Raheem Mostert ran a 4.42 40-yard dash, and it shows on the field. Despite only playing in 8 games during the 2020 season, Mostert was the single fastest ball carrier in the NFL in 2020, when he reached a top speed of 23.09 miles per hour on a touchdown against the Jets. He was also the second fastest ball carrier with a 22.73 miles per hour top speed. In 2019, Raheem Mostert had 12 breakaway runs, the 6th most among running backs, and posted a breakaway run rate of 8.8%, the highest mark among running backs. He's clearly a big play threat and hard to catch once he gets going. Moving on to some of the concerns with Raheem Mostert's fantasy profile, Chase Edmonds and the likely running back by committee. There's a good chance that Raheem Mostert isn't even the starter in Miami this year, with Chase Edmonds currently listed as the number 1 back on the depth chart and Myles Gaskin also in the backfield. And even if he does end up being the starter, the team is still likely going to go with the running back by committee approach given the depth they have. Because of this, Mostert's upside may be more limited than we'd like. The next major concern I have with Raheem Mostert's fantasy profile is his age and injuries. Mostert took just 2 carries for 20 rushing yards before his season was over in 2021. He played in just 8 games prior to going down in 2020. In his entire career, he's had just 1 season where he's played in over 12 games, 2019, where he played in all 16 regular season games. While this can partially be attributed to him being a bubble player for most of his career, it isn't very encouraging that the 30-year-old running back has struggled so much in the durability department. His injury history at the NFL level includes a shoulder injury in 2017, multiple MCL sprains in 2017 and 2020, a forearm fracture in 2018, a concussion in 2019, multiple high ankle sprains in 2020, a patella sprain in 2021, and a meniscus injury in 2021 according to draft charts. The last major concern I have with Raheem Mostert's fantasy profile is that he hasn't gotten much usage as a pass catcher. Since 2018, Raheem Mostert has totaled 36 receptions on 48 targets for 361 receiving yards and 3 receiving touchdowns over the course of 34 games, according to Pro Football Reference. A good part of this may have been that Kyle Shanahan's offense doesn't typically throw to the running back position very much, but considering Dolphins' new head coach Mike McDaniel was the offensive coordinator of that same system and Chase Edmonds is the superior pass catcher anyway, it seems unlikely that Mostert suddenly receives a massive pass-catching workload in 2022. Some additional thoughts on Raheem Mostert's fantasy profile. Raheem Mostert finished as the RB47 in Standard, with 83.7 total fantasy points and 10.5 fantasy points per game. The RB48 in half PPR formats, with 91.7 total fantasy points and 11.5 fantasy points per game. And the RB48 in full PPR formats, with 99.7 total fantasy points and 12.5 fantasy points per game according to Fantasy Pros. In half PPR formats, during the 2020 season, Mostert had 1 out of 8 games with 0 to 5 fantasy points, 4 out of 8 games with 5 to 10 fantasy points, 1 out of 8 games with 10 to 15 fantasy points, 1 out of 8 games with 15 to 20 fantasy points, and 1 out of 8 games with 20 to 25 fantasy points according to fantasy data. Offensive line. The Miami Dolphins offensive line ranked 32nd at the end of the 2021 season according to Pro Football Focus. They are expected to have 3 of their 5 same starting offensive linemen in 2021. And going into the 2022 season, the Dolphins offensive line is projected to rank as the 23rd best in the NFL according to Pro Football Focus. Personal opinion. Raheem Mostert is currently going off the board as RB43, about pick 156 overall on ESPN, and RB46, about pick 127 overall on Yahoo. I think his rushing efficiency and the familiarity with what Mike McDaniel wants to do bodes well for him in 2022 and are very good signs. I don't expect him to make it through the entire season or anything from a health perspective, but I like him at his current value since it doesn't cost you much and there's a decent chance that he's the Dolphins' main running back on the ground when he's healthy. For each of these entries, we will highlight a charitable cause or organization. Raheem Mostert's My Cause My Cleats in 2020 was for the Melanoma Research Foundation. Here's a link to that organization below. And that's it for today's entry. If you enjoyed this entry, be sure to like and subscribe.